Hello and welcome to this episode of the Handshake. My name is Amal Chaudhary and today we will be talking about the trade relations between India and China. The recently held informal summit between the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi included an announcement about the setting up of a high-level economic and trade dialogue mechanism to discuss issues related to trade, imbalances, investment and services. The high-level trade-centric mechanism comes as no surprise given the galloping trade deficit between the two countries and the pending status of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, that is the RCEP negotiations since 2012. For the past few years, New Delhi has been highly vocal about its rising trade deficit and the high tariff barriers that the Indian companies face in certain Chinese items and sectors. For example, in its submission to the World Trade Organization, that is the WTO, last year, India complained that the trade deficit with China was becoming unsustainable and that the Indian products such as farm products and meat face entry restrictions from Chinese regulatory policies despite the protocols in place. Besides the market access issues, New Delhi has flagged the concerns over the stringent Chinese visa regime preventing the Indian professionals to travel and work in China for longer durations. The Indian concerns particularly assume prominence in the light of the ongoing US-China tariff dispute. For the past 3 years, the Sino-American trade dispute, driven largely by the massive trade imbalance, has shaken the markets world over and induced new uncertainties. Although economists attribute macroeconomic factors to explain the trade deficit that the United States suffers vis-a-vis China and other countries, American policymakers, however, point to Beijing's state-guided policies such as currency manipulation, low wages, and unfair export subsidies as the reason for the trade imbalance. India, which has so far refrained from taking sides in the US-China trade dispute, nevertheless bemoans similar issues in its trade relations with China. Despite the benefits that the RCEP deal promises to bring to New Delhi, Indian industries particularly wary about the Chinese presence in the RCEP. The fear of compounding trade deficit on the account of Chinese goods flooding the Indian markets is thus strongly deterring the Indian negotiators from concluding the agreement. Also, the idea of the high-level trade dialogue is not new. At the 11th Joint Economic Group, that the GAG meeting in March last year, such mechanisms were talked about as a means to tackle the trade imbalance. The trade deficit between the two countries touched an all-time high of $63 billion in 2017 and 18. But the question which begs attention is, can a high-level trade dialogue between India and China work in reducing trade deficit? No joint statement was issued after the 11th JEG in 2018 despite various action points being flagged between the two sides. In any discussion of Sino-Indian economic relations, the trade deficit with China often acquires political undertones. The primary reason is the strategic distrust that the two countries share owing to the long-standing border dispute. New Delhi's sheltering of Dalai Lama and the Sino-Pakistan nexus. As a result, any irritant, even economic in nature, tends to become politically sensitive, demanding some kind of diplomatic intervention. The other factor relates to China's unfair trade practices, evident in the largest number of anti-dumping cases that India has slapped on Chinese goods till date. Thus, the expectation that the high-level trade dialogue can push the envelope of negotiations between the two sides remains shrouded in doubt. In fact, a trade dialogue similar to high-level border talks would only prolong the process of negotiations between the two sides and may as well delay the prospects to reach any agreement anytime soon. Although it can be argued that the talks would generate new momentum in bilateral relations, there is little hope that they would engender mutually agreed steps to minimize the existing trade imbalances and enhance India's export potential for the Chinese market. So this is it from this episode of The Handshake. For more such videos, keep watching My Nation.